Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chapter 4. Today, we're going to discuss tissue organization and function. So if you guys remember, we talked already about the fact that we're building on the levels of organization. So we started at atoms and then went to cells, and now we're at tissues. So basically what we did is we put a bunch of cells together, which are going to give us the different types of tissue. So there's a couple different types of tissue. Sorry, this is exactly what I was just talking about, right? The levels of organization. So we started off as a cell. Then we're going to sit here for this chapter in the tissue types. And then when we start to put tissues together, we're going to be able to make things like organs, like the heart. And then the organs get put together to make organ systems. So like the heart with the blood vessels all get put together and make like your cardiovascular system. So a tissue by definition is a group of similar cells performing a similar function. The human body is made up of roughly 20 different types of tissues. Each of them is going to be assigned to one of 4 categories. And then an organ is a group of tissues that perform a specialized function. So if we jump back before we start talking about the 4 different types and we talk about where do they come from, you can look at the embryology, at the development of an organism through the stages of division during development in utero. So when you talk about a zygote, that's going to be an egg and a sperm that have fertilized each other. They're going to go through different divisions, right? So you have the first cell that's going to divide from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 16 to 32, and so on. So by the time you get to the point where you have different layers, you're going to have what's called, so 3 different layers. It's going to be like an ectoderm, a mesoderm, and an endoderm. So an outside, middle, and inside. And you can start to differentiate or start to identify where different tissue types are going to come from. So if you're looking at the ectoderm, the outside, that's where some nervous tissue is coming from and some epithelial tissue comes from. So these are the different types. Maybe I should go there first. There's 4 different types of tissue. You have epithelia, connective, muscle, and nervous. So if those are the 4 different types, we can say that nervous tissue, some of it comes from the ectoderm, which is the outside layer of the developing fetus. You can also get some epithelial tissue from there as well. The mesoderm is going to be the middle layer right there that you see. So there's this pink strip right there, and that's going to be differentiating or developing into muscle tissue and connective tissue, and then sometimes epithelia. And then the endoderm, which is that yellow layer here or here, that's going to be epithelia. Okay, so one more time, the 4 different types of tissue are epithelia, connective, muscle, and nervous. So we'll start with epithelia. So when you look at these in regards to orientation, epithelia is going to be found covering all internal and external body surfaces. So you would say it kind of runs like this. Let me go back. It kind of runs like this. So if I was going to draw it for you, my drawings are not going to be great, but this is going to be superficial. That's going to be epithelia. That's what that is. Underneath the epithelia, you're going to have, oh, these look really similar, but I'll go back this way because there's a lot of it here. That layer right there is going to be connective tissue. And connective tissue is literally what it sounds like. It's going to be connecting some things. Next, underneath that, you're going to have muscle. And then inside of the muscle layers as well, you'll also have nervous tissue. So this would be muscle and then nervous tissue. And when you talk about depth, right, it's so like if you get a cut and you cut through epithelia, you're going to get into the connective tissue where you start to see vascularization or blood. If you cut deeper than that, you can get to muscle and nerves, which is a bad thing. So that's how it goes when you're talking about coverings of like the body surface. Okay. So one more time, epithelia is going to be covering all internal and external body surfaces. The cells are going to be closely packed and tightly connected and regularly shaped cells. They're going to be aligned on top of what we call a non-cellular layer, which is called the basement membrane. They do have polarity, meaning they have different sides. So you've got an apical layer, which is going to be the free layer, a lateral layer, how they're going to connect to each other, and then a basal surface, which is going to be close to the base of the cell. From there, they're going to attach to the basement membrane. And again, epithelia is avascular. So if you get a cut, but you don't see blood, you know that you've only cut through epithelia. These cells are going to be continually replaced by mitotic division and undergo regeneration all the time to make sure that they're fully functional, because there's so many layers of them, they're constantly lost. So here's what it kind of looks like. This is a much better drawing, right? This bracket area here is epithelia. Then underneath that, you have the basal lamina and then the reticular lamina, and together they make up the basement membrane. So the basement membrane is going to be how the epithelia gets attached to the next layer deep to it, which is the connective tissue. So epithelia, and then it gets connected to the connective tissue through the basement membrane. So this is the apical layer, right? It's the free surface. This is the lateral surface, which is in between the cells. And this is the basal surface, which is going to be close to the basement membrane. So every time you see a dot and another dot and another dot and another one, that means that there's one cell there. And then this is another cell, and that's another cell. And those dots in the center are going to be nuclei. Okay, so there's different types of epithelia. What we're going to start to do is start by classifying them by basing them on two general categories. Are they glandular, or do they cover surfaces and line body cavities? Glandular epithelia, so you have glands that are collections of epithelial cells that make products that are going to be released from the cells to be used by other cells for excretion. So they're going to be releasing their contents, and it's going to be moved to another cell for use. So glandular epithelia is only found in epithelia. They can have endocrine or exocrine function. So exocrine function is when the secretions are going to be into the ducts or cavities. And then endocrine is when you're going to secrete directly into a bloodstream. So exocrine glands have a duct which connects them to the epithelial surface like this. So these examples here are serous glands, which secrete watery solutions, mucus glands that release mucus, and then there's mixed, which release both. An endocrine gland is going to secrete directly into the blood, so there's no duct that's going to be found. It's going to release what we call hormones, which are chemical signals. So here's some examples of your exocrine glands. They have different structures, right? This is going to be called simple tubular, which means it's just one straight tube. Simple coiled, which is one tube, but it coils over kind of like a snail. And then simple branched, which kind of looks like the roots of a tree. Then the bottom one here is compound. Compound means that there's multiple. So you have multiple tubes here that have branched out. Alveolar are going to be simple alveolar. It just means that there's kind of this like bulging at the bottom. And then simple branched alveolar, how you have bulging into like a branched area. And then this is compound alveolar, and then compound tubulo alveolar, which means that you see more of a tube and less of the branching here. Okay, so this one is important for you guys because it tells you the different types of exocrine glands. There's merocrine, apocrine, and holocrine glands. So merocrine glands are going to have secretory products that are discharged by exocytosis. So what's going to happen here is you're going to have the vesicle, it's going to fuse with the surface, and then it's going to release its contents out. So some examples here are saliva, digestive enzymes, and then sweat. Apocrine are a little bit different. They're going to secrete the products they accumulate at the apical surface of the secreting cell. So it's going to essentially push all the products out to the free surface, and then it's going to kind of pinch off and release the whole top portion. An example here is sweat or mammary glands. And then the last one here is a holocrine secretion. This is where the secretions are going to accumulate in the cytosol. So it's the watery portion of the cell. Then the cell is going to die, and it's going to become part of the secretion. The example here is a sebaceous gland, which is like an oil gland. Okay, so that takes us out of glands and then into surface epithelia. Our surface epithelia makes up the skin, and the skin is the biggest organ in the body, right? The largest organ in the body. It lines all passageways. So like the digestive tract, right? So the digestive tract is a tube which food can move through, but lining that tube is epithelia. Or blood vessels, right? Blood vessels pass through and transport blood, but lining that tube that the blood transports through is a different type of epithelia. It can also line body cavities like the abdominal pelvic cavity, and then also cover organs and form the hairs and nails of your body. So when we talk about the classification of this type of epithelia, we start to talk about them in regards to how many layers they have. So layers is either going to be simple, stratified, or pseudostratified. So this is actually pretty easy. Simple means one. So you see one layer of cells. Stratified is also easy. It means more than one. And then pseudo-stratified, if we break this word down, the prefix pseudo means fake. So it's fakely stratified, meaning it looks like it's multiple layers, but it's actually really just one. After we count the number of layers, the second thing we're going to do is look at the shape of the cell. So you have three different shapes of the cell. One of them is squamous. Those are going to be squished. The second is cuboidal. They're going to be cube-shaped. And then the third is columnar. These are going to be taller than they are wide. So when you put all of these together, we can start to talk about the different types, because you can have, for example, simple squamous epithelia, or you could have stratified squamous epithelia, or you could have simple columnar epithelia, or stratified columnar epithelia. So we're going to talk about those now. Before I get there, we should talk about the functions. So each of the epithelia, depending upon where it's located and what type it is going to have a different function. So these are all of the possible functions that the cells can have. But again, it's going to be based on the number of layers and then the shape itself. They have the ability to protect, diffuse, filter, excrete, absorb, or secrete. The numbers on these right here are going to be able to be followed over here. So anything that's a single layer, which is simple epithelia, can function as 2, 3, 4, or 5, that means it could either be for diffusion, filtration, excretion, absorption, or secretion. And again, that's going to depend on what type of, not what type, but where it's going to be found. Anything that's going to be more than one layer stratified is always for protection. And then something that looks stratified but is not, is pseudo-stratified. It is either going to be for protection or secretion. Okay, so one by one. We'll start off with simple squamous epithelia. Simple squamous epithelia is going to be one layer of squished cells. These are the thinnest layer that you can find. You would find them in your capillary walls, in the alveoli of lungs, covering visceral organs, or lining body cavities. The idea here is that you want the thinnest layer of cells possible because you want to move stuff across it. So for example, if we're talking about the capillary walls, blood carries oxygen and carbon dioxide. So it carries oxygen into the body and carbon dioxide out of the body, but you have to first diffuse them across the cell, right? Across the layer of cells. Because we diffuse these gases so commonly, right? Literally all day, every day, you want it to be really easy for the cells to move, really thin, so it's easy for the oxygen and the CO2 or the gases to move across that barrier or the cell wall. So for that reason, they wanted to pick simple squamous epithelia because that's the easiest type to move across because it's the thinnest. Next is going to be simple cuboidal epithelia. So here, there's a picture of a kidney. So this is one layer of cube-shaped cells. Sorry, let me go back really quick and tell you guys. How you identify how many layers there are is you're going to count the number of nuclei. So if you can see here, there's only one layer of nuclei. Again, one layer of nuclei, one layer of nuclei. Here, there's a layer here and another layer on top and another layer on top and another layer on top. So again, that's going to be stratified. Here you have 2 layers of cuboidal. So again, stratified. Pseudo-stratified columnar is, it might seem a little bit tricky, but it's really easy when all you do is look at the nuclei. So if you're looking at simple columnar, you'll notice that the cells are generally in a straight row. When you go here and you look at the pseudo-stratified columnar, you'll notice that the cells are going to jump up and down in this zigzag kind of fashion. That tells you pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelia. It's a dead giveaway every time. And then the last one, which we haven't talked about just yet, it's a unique form. It's called transitional epithelia. Trans means change. What's changing here is the shape of the cells. So the cells could be either squamous, cuboidal, or columnar, or a mix of all three, right, above the basement membrane, and that would tell you that it's transitional epithelia. Okay, so here you have one layer of the cube-shaped cells. Again, it's found in the kidneys, salivary ducts, or the pancreatic ducts. The function here is to secrete. So secretion is going to be moving stuff from inside of the body to the kidneys. Excrete means out of the body, or to absorb, meaning to move like nutrients from the digestive tract into your body. Next is simple columnar epithelia. These are going to be one layer of column-shaped cells, and it's very, very common that they have these white pockets in them. The white pockets that you see here or here, and again, the difference between the left and right is just magnification. This is pretty far away. This is very close up. Those white dots or white pockets, if you will, are called goblet cells. What the goblet cells do is they secrete mucus. So for that reason, they're going to be lining your digestive tract so that the mucus could line it and protect it. And for that reason, they're going to help with protection, but they also help with secretion and absorption of nutrients. Next one is PCCE. You guys can hopefully identify. I know that the nuclei are pretty lightly stained here, but it'll be a lot better in person. You can identify the nuclei that are kind of jumping up and down. They have this hairy-like structure on the apical surface, and then they have those white pockets, which are goblet cells. That tells you it's PCCE. So PCCE is pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelia found in the nasal septum, the trachea, the bronchi, and then the male reproductive tract. And because it's pretty thick in comparison with other types of tissue, one of the functions is protection, and then also secretion, because it's going to be releasing mucus so that you can help trap foreign particles in that thick mucus layer. Okay, that's it for simple. Now we're going to move over into stratified. So now we have stratified squamous epithelia. So stratified squamous epithelia is multiple layers, right? You can see like tons of layers here, 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 all the way out to here of squished cells. So going to be found in the mouth, esophagus, vagina, or the anal canal. Because there's so many layers here, every single area where this is found is going to be for protection. The next type is going to be, I'm sorry, I didn't specify. This is going to be called mucoid. So there's stratified squamous epithelia, mucoid. There's two different types of stratified squamous epithelia. The mucoid ones, most people say they see eyeballs in them. So the eyeballs go all the way to the apical surface. This next one is keratinized. So the keratin, it kind of looks like that cotton candy fluffiness right there on the apical side. No eyeballs, just fluffiness. What the keratin is it's a protein that we find on our skin. The protein is going to help make our skin water resistant, not water is able to go through, but water resistant, or I'm sorry, it's like a protection, but it still can go through. So yeah, the keratin would be found on the apical surface of the skin, and then again, because there's so many layers, it's for protection. The next one's transitional epithelia. Transitional epithelia is very unique. It's only found in places that you need a lot of stretching. So your ureters and your urinary bladder have the ability to stretch. Your urinary bladder actually has the ability or the capacity to hold up to 1 liter of fluid. 1 liter of fluid is a lot. And in that case, you would need this white space to open up to hold a lot of liquid. So function here is distension. Okay. I don't know if you guys caught on, but we did skip stratified cuboidal and columnar because they're very, very, very rare. So we skipped those ones. Make sure you guys learn the ones we talked about. Okay, now we're going to move off of the epithelia and into the connective. So we're going one layer deeper. So again, I said connective tissue, the function is going to be to bind, support, and protect. Mainly, it's just connecting the epithelia to what's beneath it. It does have some metabolic functioning, and then sometimes also acts as a defense and transportation system for the body. Connective tissue is never, ever located on an exposed body surface. It's only going to be found internally to support soft organs or attaches organs to body walls. There's lots of different types of connective tissue, which we'll talk about in just a second, but what they all have in common is where they came from. So they come from the mesoderm layer of an embryo, and that the fact that cells are not usually in direct contact with each other, they have some sort of ground matrix. So generalized connective tissue cells and fibers, we can talk about them having what we call fibroblasts, which are a specific type of cell that helps with a network of them. Those ones are really common. White blood cells or adipocytes, right? These are different types of cells that you could find in connective tissue. White blood cells are for your body's immune system, and adipocytes are essentially fat cells that are going to store energy. So fibers in your connective tissue are going to determine how much elasticity and strength that particular tissue has. There's 3 different types of fibers that you need to know, which are right here: collagen, reticular, and elastic. So collagen are going to be the ones that are going to be for strength. They're these gray bands through there. Reticular is going to be very thin, but it's going to be kind of like a webbing, and that's going to help with the support or framework. And then elastic fibers are going to be strong but stretchable, which basically tells you that they're going to allow stretch through the tissue, and that's going to be that green band right there. The connective tissue cell types and functions. So here you have a nice table that's going to lay it out for you. So we have different types of cells, like a mesenchymal cell, which is an embryonic source of all connective tissue cells. A fibroblast, chondroblast, or osteoblast. These are going to be for structural support. An adipocyte, which is going to be for energy storage, and then also fat helps insulate. And then a plasma cell, lymphocyte, neutrophil, eosinophil, basophil, mast cell, or macrophage. These are going to all be for your immune system and your body's defense. Okay, we said that they don't all interact with each other. They have to have a matrix or a ground substance. So what that is it's a non-living extracellular material that holds the cells of the connective tissue away from each other. So there's 3 main types. There's a clear or a semi-fluid gel. There's clear and watery, or there is fibrous, so like collagen, reticular, or elastic. So classification of connective tissue, different categories. We have what's called connective tissue proper. And of connective tissue proper, we have loose and dense. What that means is this is loosely packed, meaning you see lots of space. This is densely packed, meaning very close together, and there's not a lot of space. So different types for loose would be areolar, adipose, or reticular. Different types for dense would be dense regular, dense irregular, or elastic connective tissue. Then we have fluid connective tissue, and because it's a fluid, it's mostly made up of water, which means that it's a liquid, which means it's either blood or lymph. Blood is going to be in your cardiovascular system. Lymph is going to be of your lymphatic system. And then the last part here is going to be supporting connective tissue. 2 different types. One's going to be gel, one's going to be solid. The gel is going to be cartilage. It is solid, but it's very rubbery. So 3 different types. You have hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. Then on the other side of that, we said the solid was going to be bone. You can have bone that's going to be calcified, which is basically has a crystal matrix, which means it's hard. Okay, so one by one. This is called loose areolar connective tissue. You can see because it's loose, it's very spacious. There's lots of white in the background, but you also see these fibers running through it. This is going to form a wrap around your internal organs, your blood vessels, muscles, and nerves. And this function here is to support your body. Next one is adipose. Some people will say this looks like chicken wire because you can just see like the outside ring of the chicken wire here. And if you were to get a really good view and focus on the nucleus, you would be able to see like this is a nuclei here and here, and this is going to be fat cells. So you would see adipose in fat, in the hypodermis, which is a deep layer of the epithelia, and then also in bone marrow. But the function here is going to be for lipid storage and insulation. Next is going to be reticular connective tissue. This one looks very spotted and pink and purple in color. The location here is going to be the stroma of the organs, and it's going to help build the framework or the skeleton of the organs. Next, we have dense regular connective tissue. This is going to be very wave-like, but the waves are very calm. And because it's dense, there's no white space. They're very closely packed together cells. Location here is going to be found in tendons or ligaments. So tendons are going to connect muscle to bone, and ligaments are going to connect bone to bone. And the function here would be to increase its strength. Next is dense irregular. Most of the time when we describe this, we would say that both of these have waves, but the dense irregular waves kind of crash into each other. And when they crash into each other, it becomes this irregular formation. So this is going to be found in the dermis of the integument and then also in the fascia. And it's going to be to support and then resist pulling from many directions. Next one is elastic connective tissue. Most people say this one looks like worms, right? You kind of see these dark squiggly worms running through there. Those squiggly worms are actually the elastic fibers, and the reason they're squiggly is because they have the ability to stretch and recoil. For those reasons, it's going to be found in like your vocal cords, your lungs, your arteries, and your elastic cartilage. And again, the function is stretching and then recoil. Next is going to be your fluid connective tissue. So you've got blood. You've got red blood cells and white blood cells, and they're going to be found in your cardiovascular system. They're going to be to transport gases and then also work as a defense for your body, as well as regulating the content of it. And then the next one is going to be cartilage. This is the one that we said was gel-like. These cells have a different name in them. So the cells of cartilage are going to be called chondrocytes. Chondrocytes, most people say they look like those eyeballs. If you guys see the eyeballs here or here or here or here, right? Chondrocytes are going to be the cells of cartilage. So anytime you see an eyeball, that's a dead giveaway that you're looking at cartilage. The chondrocytes have to sit inside of this like opening that we call a lacunae. And then what they're going to do is they're going to secrete a dense matrix of collagen fibers and chondroitin sulfate, which is going to help absorb and hold large amounts of water to make it more resistant to compression, which means you find cartilage in areas where you want to reduce compression. So like in between your vertebrae, right, which is the bones of your spine. So when you do things like jump, it doesn't hurt because you have cartilage in between them. And then you'll also find so there's a few blood vessels or nerves in the matrix, which means that the cartilage damage is very, very, very slow to heal. So with a low amount of blood and a small amount of nerves, if you damage cartilage, it takes a very long time to heal. So here's the 3 different types. This is called hyaline cartilage. And again, every single one of these is going to have the eyeball. Hyaline, it tends to stain very light. So you'll see it as like a light pink or a light purple in color. It's going to be found in your joints, your ribs, your nose, your larynx, your trachea, bronchi, and fetal skeleton. And the function here is strength. It has a smooth surface and it's for strength. Next one is elastic cartilage. You guys will notice that the elastic cartilage stained very, very, very dark. If I go back a couple of slides, you guys will notice that the elastic connective tissue also stained very dark. So anything that you see that's like a dark navy blue or black, that's a dead giveaway for you that it's elastic tissue. If it has dark black squiggly lines, it's elastic CT or connective tissue. If it has dark black eyeballs, that's elastic cartilage. And this elastic cartilage could be found in the ear, the eustachian tube, or the epiglottis. And the function here is going to be strength and elasticity. And then the last type of cartilage here is called fibrocartilage. The difference between this one, and the other two is that this one has fibers running through it. So if you get a really good image underneath your microscope, you'd be able to see the waves here. Those waves are going to be it has like an impression of it, right? It has waves that go through there. Those are going to be the fibers. So it's called fibrocartilage. Fibrocartilage is going to be found in the intervertebral discs, so between the vertebrae, and the pubic symphysis, which is the connection between your hips on the front side, and the menisci of your knee, which is between like the upper leg and the lower leg. And the function here is strength. and support, but also they act as shock absorbers. And that takes us into our last type of connective tissue, which is the solid bone. So bone is going to be able to either be solid, which is called compact bone, or spongy, which has an open matrix. When you talk about bone, they also have a different name for their cells. They're going to be called osteocytes. And very much like the chondrocytes, the osteocytes have to sit inside of an opening, which we call, again, the lacunae. Bone has a calcified matrix, and then also what we call a Haversian system, which basically just means that there's a blood supply that's taking the blood to the bone cells. And again, there's two different types, compact and spongy. This one is called compact, black and white, compact bone. This is also compact bone, but it's now from bone marrow. So when you're looking at, at it, the compact bone, it looks really smooth. So it would be for protection and support. And then this is going to be compact and spongy, like a special staining of it. So where you see both of them in one view. Oops. So be spongy and compact in one view. And that takes us all the way into our membranes and fascia. So we have different types of membranes that line our body, which are going to be sheets of epithelia with associated types of connective tissue. And then fascia is going to be a sheet of connective tissue that's either going to be deep in the body, close to the surface, and it has the ability to support our soft tissues, help with strength, stability, and maintaining posture. So again, these membranes, they're flat sheets of pliable, which means easily movable tissue that's going to cover or line a part of the body. The epithelial membranes are going to consist of epithelial layers and then underlying connective tissue layers. So they'll have things like, they have types like mucous membrane, serous membrane, and a cutaneous membrane. And then there's one exception. The last one is a synovial membrane. This one's a little bit different only because it's found in a specific place, which we will talk about right now. So membranes, you have a mucous membrane, which is always going to line an area of the body that's going to open to the outside environment. So like your mouth or your trachea, which opens again to the outside environment. Then you have a serous membrane that is going to line a body cavity that's going to be closed. So it's only on the interior side of your body. So it does not at all touch the exterior part of the body. A cutaneous membrane is the skin. And then a synovial membrane is going to be found lining a joint cavity that's freely movable. So only 4 areas, right leg, left leg, and then left arm and right arm. Those are the only places where synovial joints will occur. Okay, and then here's an overview again of connective tissue framework. So your CT is going to be an internal framework of the body. It's again for strength and stability. It helps provide support for your internal organs and then helps distribute blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves. Okay, that takes us into our last 2 types of tissue, which are actually very short in comparison to what we just covered. Our muscle tissue has 3 different types, and all 3 types have the same exact function, to move. So the 3 different types are going to have different differences in how you can identify them, as well as one of them is unique in the sense that it is voluntary, which is the first one. So your skeletal muscle is going to be what we call striated, which means it appears to be striped. So you can see like a dark band and then a light band, and then a dark band and then a light band, and then a dark band, and so on. And then also it's going to be multinucleated, so more than 1 nucleus per cell, and skeletal muscle is going to be under voluntary control. So if I asked you to write your name on a piece of paper or to answer these a quiz that I gave you, and you'd have to use your pencil, right? You would have to consciously think about what you're going to do with your hand in order to write your name and then bubble in some answers. So all those muscles that you're using in your hand are going to be under voluntary control. That would be skeletal muscle. Cardiac is a little bit different. Cardia actually means heart, which tells you exactly where this is found. So your cardiac muscle is going to be found in your heart or composing your heart. Not sure if you guys are aware just yet, but your heart is a muscle itself, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, depending upon how well you condition it, right? Your heart, if it's conditioned well through exercise, it can become really efficient. But if it's not conditioned and it's in a body of a couch potato, it's going to become inefficient, which means it has to pump a lot more often than somebody else's does. So cardiac is going to also have striations, but then they're also going to have this unique thing that we call intercalated discs. So those bands right there that you see are going to be called intercalated discs, and they're kind of like a dark stripe. What they do is they help communication between the cardiac cells or the cardiac tissue, which is really good because your heart has to beat very systematically. Your heart is under involuntary control, which means you do not have to control when or if it's going to be pumping. It does it all on its own. And then the last one is smooth muscle. This is also going to be under involuntary control. It's going to have spindle-shaped cells, meaning it's going to be chunky in the center and it's going to taper off at the ends. And it's going to be found in places where you don't have to think about it being used. So an example here would be like your digestive system, right? You're going to move food from your mouth to your esophagus by swallowing, and then down your esophagus into your stomach, then from your stomach into your small intestine, then from your small intestine into your large intestine. And once you swallow that food, you do not at all have to think about that food moving. It's moving because the muscle that's lining the digestive tract is smooth muscle. And the contractions that are occurring, your body takes care of all on its own. So this is what they would look like side by side. You can see the striped here for skeletal. You can see those dark bands, which are intercalated discs for cardiac. And then you can see here that this is spindle shaped, meaning it's chunky in the center and tapers off at the end for smooth. Okay, our very last type of tissue is nervous tissue. Nervous tissue is really unique. It is going to look a lot like stars. So you can start to see these like star shapes coming in here. The stars are going to be, they have a couple different parts that are going to receive information, integrate the information, and then send out information. So again, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking and you'll see these kind of star-like shape-looking things that are going to have these like little arms or appendages out there. And another unique thing about nervous tissue is that it's colored blue, right? So when it stains blue like that, it's a dead giveaway that it's nervous tissue. Okay, we'll cover the nervous system in much more depth in its own chapter or chapters. So for now, we're going to move on to tissue repair because we're just talking about tissues. So tissue repair, tissue that is worn out or damaged is going to be replaced. And it can be done because we have what's called stroma, which is the supportive framework of connective tissue, or parenchyma or parenchyma, however you want to pronounce that. That's going to help provide new cells. So epithelia and some connective tissue through the use of stem cells has the ability to continuously renew itself. Cartilage has a diminished capacity, and that just has to do with the fact that it has a very low nerve innervation and very small blood supply. And then also muscle and nervous tissue, not very easily replaced, which is why they're found deeper in the body, so that hopefully we're protecting them better because they don't get repaired very well. So an example here is fibrosis. Fibrosis is the process of scar formation. So with extensive injury, there's granulation tissue that's going to form, which means it's actively growing connective tissue, and it's unspecialized at the time. You could develop some adhesions that would result from fibrosis, which basically just means there's a bumpy or abnormal junction between the cells that are touching each other, and it kind of looks a little bit raised, and it looks a little bit more prominent. That would be fibrosis. So here's what you would be looking at, right? So this over here is the clotting that would occur, and then the scab that's being formed. And in this case, you have epithelial cells that are multiplying and they're starting to fill in the granulation tissue. And then you have the repair. So it's the restoration of the epithelia, but it's going to start to thicken now. And the area, when it's thick, is now mature and it's ready to continue contracting again. So there are factors that are going to contribute to tissue repair. So things like nutrition. When you have adequate nutrition or protein input into your body, you're able to repair better. And then also when you're consuming vitamin C, You're able to repair better because it's going to help produce the collagen fibers. And then also what's called angiogenesis, which is the process of creating these new cells. And if you also have proper blood circulation, so it means you have a good O2 supply and nutrients, it's going to help bring those in and get rid of waste and also help with your body's immune system. And then also age contributes to repair. So collagen, as you age, you're going to have increased in number, but decreased in resiliency. So more, but they're less effective. Your elastin fibers are going to start to fragment and they're going to start to break, which means they're going to be abnormally bonded to calcium. And that's when things start to get wrinkly. And then the last part here is that cell division and protein synthesis is actually slowed down as you get older, which also decreases the rate of tissue repair. Okay, you guys, that's it for this lecture. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in class.